Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. Life expectancy. 1 year. Suddenly, my daily life was enveloped in darkness. The first thought that crossed my mind was whether to tell my husband and son about this. I struggled with this for a bit but ultimately decided not to tell them. I didn't want them to see me weaken, and more than that, knowing firsthand the hardships of caregiving, I didn't want to impose that on them. So, what should I do? The answer came to me quickly: ask for a divorce without saying anything. I couldn't think of any other option. And so, I began what is commonly known as end-of-life planning without telling them anything. One day,
Willa, come here for a moment. We need to talk.
A sudden summons. I had no concrete reason to think so, but I was almost certain internally that he had discovered my illness. There he was, with a grave expression, sitting at the table in the living room. Sensing something serious was about to happen, my heart pounded so hard it felt like it would leap out of my chest.
I'll get straight to the point.
I swallowed hard.
I can't deal with a caregiving life. I've seen how tough it was for you. So, let's get divorced.
The unexpected statement made my vision go dark for a moment. I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for everything. Ignoring my husband, who seemed to have more to say, I left the living room, and ran out of the house without even the bags I had packed. It was raining outside.
Hey, Willa. What's for dinner tonight?
My husband, Hunter, after finishing some gardening, peeked in from the yard and abruptly asked. It was 3 p.m., a bit early to be thinking about dinner. But this was a usual occurrence. I haven't decided yet.
Oh, I see.
He has always been selfish. His womanizing wasn't a one-time thing, and he left most of the housework and childcare to me since he was always like that. He had a penchant for gambling, dabbling in slot machines, horse racing, cycling races, and various other bets, winning and losing repeatedly. He never incurred debts, but there were times when he came close. Even without that, it was extremely difficult for me. Just as our son, Jaden, was becoming more independent, my mother-in-law suffered a cerebrovascular disease and became partially paralyzed. I took care of her almost entirely on my own, but 2 years ago, she passed away, finally freeing me from that burden. As for my husband, I'm honestly not sure what he was doing during that time. He went to work as usual and probably gambled with any extra money he had. He didn't entirely avoid contributing financially. When he won, he'd come home in a good mood and give me money for cosmetics, a nice watch, or even household expenses. But since gambling usually results in losses, there were times it impacted our household finances, and I scolded him when he lost big. I can't even explain why I stuck with him through all this. After he retired, he seemed to change. He stopped fooling around and only dabbled in horse racing. I would see him pondering over the racing newspaper, pen in mouth, and it somehow suited him, for better or worse. Surprisingly, he also took an interest in gardening, a much healthier hobby than gambling. I felt relieved seeing this. As we reached this stage in life, peaceful days finally seemed to arrive. One day, sometime after,
Willa, I won.
The red pen tucked behind his ear clattered to the ground. What? What happened? His loud voice made me shout back.
I hit the trifecta. $1,000.
Apparently, he had hit the jackpot. Until then, his winnings had only been a few hundred at best, but this time it was $1,000 payout. My husband was overjoyed like a child.
Let's go on a trip with this.
What? A few days later, he cashed out and returned home with a significant amount of money. It wasn't enough to feel secure for retirement, but it was still a substantial sum. He suggested using it for a trip, which was very much like him. When was the last time we went on a trip?
When should we go? And where do you want to go?
Seeing him so excited, I reminisced about our past. It wasn't always sweet, but they were good memories. Thinking back, it's a mystery why I stayed with him, but he was still my partner. There must be some unexplainable charm or something. Anywhere is fine. I don't have any specific plans.
All right, I'll decide then.
He deftly handled his smartphone. I never got the hang of it and could only use the basic functions, but he had mastered it.
How about going abroad?
At our age, that's a bit too much.
Really? Okay, then domestic it is.
It didn't seem like him, but I didn't mind. I was a bit happy thinking we could finally relax and enjoy some quiet time together. This trip would be a good opportunity to discuss our future. He had mellowed out, so he probably wouldn't suggest anything outrageous. A week before the trip, while preparing, I suddenly felt a strange sensation in my body. An intense pain simultaneously crushed me from both my abdomen and back. Almost at the same time, blackness crept in from the edges of my vision, quickly enveloping everything. When I regained consciousness, my son Jaden's face was in front of me. Jaden, what are you doing here?
What am I doing here? You collapsed.
According to him, I had passed out in the bedroom and was rushed to the hospital. I recalled that he had said he'd be coming home today. I shuddered to think what might have happened if he hadn't been there. The surroundings were noisy with several nurses bustling about. Something serious seemed to be happening. As I pondered whether I was the cause of the commotion, my mind, still foggy, couldn't form a clear answer. As I tried to gather my thoughts, a dull pain surged through my abdomen. I instinctively clutched at it.
What's wrong? Are you okay?
I'm fine, just a bit of pain. I tried to put on a brave face to avoid worrying my son, but the pain was real. Even if I received a diagnosis, I didn't want to tell my son or husband. I didn't want to burden them with worry or show them my weakening state. I didn't want them to go through the hardships of caregiving. With that resolve, I managed to stay conscious. After several tests, I was admitted to the hospital. I told my son I was okay and sent him home to gather my things. I told him to inform my husband it was just a checkup. All I could do was hope for the best. That night, a middle-aged male doctor in a white coat walked briskly towards me and sat down quietly. Looking at his face, I immediately sensed something bad is about to happen. He had a very serious expression. "Miss Park, please listen calmly." I thought, it's the usual phrase. My intuition turned to certainty. "Yes. We've found cancer. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. It's inoperable. So this is what it means to have your vision go dark." Though it had gone dark just before I lost consciousness earlier, this time was entirely different. The sense of despair was on another level. "I see. Cancer. All the previously busy noises faded away, and I could barely hear the doctor's words. It seemed the hustle and bustle were all about me. You have a year to live. The prognosis was like an additional blow. While I couldn't hear the surrounding noises, the sound of things collapsing inside me was clear. They fell like a tower of blocks. A year. All my plans for old age, insignificant as they were now ruined. Or rather, old age itself was no longer an option. I sympathize with your situation. What exactly could he sympathize with? Amidst the confusion and doubt, my baseless anger was directed at the doctor. You can be admitted immediately, but you probably have things to take care of. For now, we'll manage with medication to slow the progression. Later, we'll consider the types of treatment. For now, all I could say was, I understand. Later, Hunter and Jaden, despite our strained relationship, came to visit me together.
Hey, Willa. Are you okay?
I'm fine. I just fell and got hurt. You two are overreacting. Though I said that, knowing the truth, Jaden's gaze was piercing. After returning home, I sighed in front of the suitcase I was packing. The first thing that came to mind was whether I should tell them the truth. I pondered briefly but chose not to. So, what should I do next? I quickly found the answer. I would file for divorce without saying anything. This was the only option that came to mind. With that decision, my half-packed suitcase wouldn't go to waste. Thus, I began what is commonly referred to as end-of-life preparations without telling them anything. Since the trip was postponed, most of my luggage remained as it was. Hunter initially seemed disappointed but accepted the situation, keeping his feelings to himself. One day, as I was secretly packing to leave, Hunter appeared in the bedroom.
Willa, come here for a minute. We need to talk.
A sudden call. Though I had no proof, I was almost certain inside. Could it be that my illness was discovered? Hunter sat seriously at the table in the middle of the living room. Feeling this was no ordinary situation, my heart raced as if it would leap out of my chest.
I'll get straight to the point.
I swallowed nervously.
I can't handle a caregiving life. I saw how hard it was for you. So, let's get a divorce.
His unexpected words made my vision almost go black again. Did he hear it from Jaden? Or did he somehow find out about my illness and use it as a reason to ask for a divorce? Though I knew he had always been selfish, I never thought it was to this extent. Simultaneously, I realized my decision was not wrong. After all, this was my original plan. Facing his rejection gave me a strange sense of relief. I understand. I'll leave. Thank you for everything. Ignoring my husband who seemed to want to say more, I left the living room and ran out of the house. It was raining outside. Though I left with great determination, I had no place to go. I hadn't taken the prepared suitcase, only the smartphone I barely knew how to use. I even left my wallet. Moreover, the rain, which was moderate when I left, was now a downpour. I watched it from under a wisteria vine in the park. What should I do? Going back would be humiliating, but even staying at a business hotel or being admitted again required a wallet. I was disappointed in myself for forgetting such an obvious thing in my rare moment of anger. What if I had another attack here? The park was empty on a weekday afternoon. Normally it would be filled with children and their parents, but now the rain was the only sound. No one would pass by. Despite my intentions, my anxiety grew. The wisteria vine roof was full of holes, and rainwater was drenching me, making me cold and worsening my condition. But there was nothing I could do. The rain showed no signs of stopping. I waited for a while, but no one came. I had no choice but to go back. Just as I thought that, I was hit by severe stomach pain again. There was no mistaking it, it was the same pain as before. My fears were confirmed. I might lose consciousness again, or worse. As I reached for my smartphone, I heard a voice through the downpour.
There you are, Mom. What are you doing here?
His voice kept my consciousness from slipping away. Once again, my son saved me.
You left without an umbrella. And what's with not listening to Dad? Wait, are you feeling sick again? Hold on, I'll call an ambulance.
At the hospital, I was immediately admitted. It was inevitable. Later, Hunter came to visit my hospital room. I wondered if he really didn't want to take care of me, but remembered Jaden's words in the park and stayed silent. Then Hunter spoke, and his words were again unexpected.
Why didn't you tell me earlier? Since when?
I didn't understand what he was saying and opened my mouth. You don't want to take care of me, right? Why did you come if we're getting a divorce?
What? I never said that.
I suppressed my rising anger. This was a hospital, not home. I shouldn't disturb other patients. Yes, you did. You said, I don't want a caregiving life. I didn't intend to burden you either, so it was convenient.
Why are you suddenly saying I wouldn't take care of you?
What nonsense are you talking about? I don't want your help, so go home.
I'm asking why you kept it a secret.
Both of us were getting heated. Despite knowing it was disruptive, I couldn't help raising my voice. We seemed to be talking past each other. What was he trying to say? Seeing this, Jaden intervened.
Wait. Both of you, reveal what you're hiding. I know everything, but I won't say anything. Talk it out.
Then he left. I had no idea what was happening but explained my current condition honestly and calmly.
Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. I see.
What about you? What are you hiding?
I was told I have lung cancer. 6 months to live, maybe 10.
What a shock. So what did he mean by those words earlier?
You took care of my mother. I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to cause you more trouble. That's why I said I couldn't live a caregiving life. I had no idea you had cancer too.
Upon hearing my husband's confession, my emotions were a tangled mess, but the first thing I thought was, this is beyond a lack of communication. If he had explained things properly, we wouldn't have ended up discussing this in the hospital room. Then, you should have said it more clearly.
I am sorry. I didn't want to keep you tied down to me even at this age. So, I thought we could go on a big trip and then I'd tell you everything. I wanted you to do what you love rather than take care of me.
After a pause, he continued.
But I never expected you to get cancer too. What are the odds?
In the end, We were thinking the same thing. Both of us were keeping our illnesses a secret, seeking self-satisfaction in our self-sacrifice. Now, I think I understand why we were drawn to each other. I was thinking the exact same thing. I'm sorry for keeping it from you.
No, I should be the one apologizing. I've been nothing but trouble. If you don't mind, could we stay together a little longer? I know it's selfish, but if our time is short, I want us to do what we want together.
In this situation, I couldn't find a reason to refuse. More than anything, I found the whole exchange so absurd that I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Haha.
What? I'm being serious.
I know. That's why it's funny, isn't it? That we were both thinking the same thing. But going abroad is a bit much.
I know. That was a joke. After all, I had already been given a terminal diagnosis at that time.
Even though he had won big at the races, suggesting a trip was a reflection of his thoughts about the future. It was natural that it felt unlike him. Since that rainy day, we decided to undergo palliative care, repeatedly visiting the hospital but continuing our life at home as usual. Though the attacks weren't completely under control, things were much more stable. Now, we were choosing our travel destination again.
It'll have to be within the prefecture, or at least the neighboring one.
While my husband deliberated, I was looking for a hospice, not a travel destination. We both agreed that we didn't want to burden our son and decided to enter a hospice together. After the trip, we would move to a new place. This trip marked the beginning of a new journey in two ways. A final one-night, two-day trip just for the two of us. We visited famous places and took a break at a restaurant. Enjoying fresh seafood in the afternoon, we settled scores about each other.
I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused when we were young.
Not just when we were young. Even recently, your lack of communication nearly made me catch a cold.
I said I'm sorry. And it's not just me. You were planning to leave without saying anything. That was too secretive.
I knew how hard caregiving could be, so I didn't want you to do it.
So, it's the same for both of us. I didn't want you to go through it twice. But thanks to Jaden, we managed to have an honest conversation and it turned out well. It's all good in the end, right?
No matter what, our conversations inevitably drifted back to the recent significant events. My husband had always been reckless with gambling and selfish. When he suddenly asked for a divorce, I thought his selfishness had reached its peak. But when I looked back, it was clear that we weren't communicating properly, and it ended up causing our son trouble. If we didn't reflect on this, what else was there to reflect on? I didn't understand everything, but at least back then, despite his lack of words, he was thinking about me. That alone made me a bit happy.
So, I wanted to go on one last trip with you, but is there anything you want to do?
My husband asked, munching on seafood. He didn't look like a terminal cancer patient at all. I took his question seriously. Horse racing.
Huh.
I want to try horse racing. A week before entering the hospice, we went to a nearby racecourse. Barring something unusual, this would likely be our last outing together.
Are you really going to bet?
Yes, I'm serious. Even so, it wasn't about winning or losing. I just wanted to experience gambling. On the other hand, I also wanted to understand why my husband found it so engaging.
Which horse? Are you going to pick one yourself?
My husband, with his usual serious look, had a red ballpoint pen tucked behind his ear and a folded racing paper. He was aiming to win as usual. Of course. They say beginner's luck comes from choosing a name you like, right? It's a common saying.
Ha, then pick whichever you like.
At this point, placing small bets wouldn't be fun, so I decided to go big and chose a trifecta. Maybe we're alike in some ways. The fanfare blared, and the crowd roared. Just feeling this excitement was worth the trip.
No way.
The announced numbers and their order seemed familiar.
Let me see that.
There was no need to check the results.
You really won.
The payout was a staggering $2,000, double the highest amount my husband had ever won. And so, we enjoyed our remaining days together and finally entered the hospice. It was a nice place with good facilities and attentive care. Much more beautiful than I had imagined. I really liked it here. If our son hadn't come to pick us up on that rainy day, we would have continued misunderstanding each other and wouldn't have ended up here. In my case, I might not even be alive. But now, here I am, with the person I've shared joys and sorrows with for decades. We made our final memories together. It was the best possible ending.
It's a nice place. I'm not settled in yet. But I guess I will soon.
As he muttered to himself, I could sense the emotions behind his words, because I was in the same position. How much longer do we have to live? I felt the same way. If we weren't together, the fear would have been overwhelming. But now, it wasn't. According to the doctor, my husband was likely to go first. But that didn't mean I could let my guard down. If I left him alone, who knows what would happen? I had to live to the fullest to make sure I didn't leave my unreliable husband behind. His selfishness was worse than cancer and wouldn't change, so he would probably go before me. Ideally, I'd like him to live longer, but it would be fine either way. I'm used to his selfishness. And then, the morning came. Despite being given a 10-month prognosis, my husband fought cancer for a year. Unlike that day, the sky was clear and bright. With such good weather, he wouldn't lose his way to his destination.
Willa. I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused.
My husband, bedridden, had become emaciated over the past year. It was a sight hard to bear. What are you saying now? We settled this long ago.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you too. My eyes welled up. Trying to hold it back made my chest hurt. Realizing this was really goodbye, emotions surged. But I would soon follow him. Thinking that made my heart feel a bit lighter. We would meet again soon, after all.
Dad. You did well. Rest in peace.
Good night. I'll be there soon. With our son, the doctor, and caregivers watching, the fanfare for his final race sounded. How did you like this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.